ما حطيتش description hein. So I think we're going to start. Welcome everyone. We're very happy and pleased to have you. I'm very honored to be here with you today for this moderation. This panel is going to be translated by Mrs. Merchisha Sheker. Je la salue, and I just got her sound. If you don't need the translation, you can just turn it off. There is a special icon for that. This event is being broadcasted live on different Facebook pages of all the different partners. So as I would say for starting, I would say that this webinar is supposed to be presenting the findings and recommendations of the study Building a Sustainable Career Center model in Tunisia. It was conducted by MIA and MPA students team from Columbia University School of International Public Affairs. Some of them are here with us. We're going to be pleased to have their presentation later. And of course, this study has covered a benchmark of career centers models and best practices in 6 different countries. Also the results of a field survey and analysis of the situation of career centers in Tunisia, and I think the minister will probably be talking about that in a few seconds. And this webinar is also organized in partnership with the Ministry of Higher Education and also the ESEO, the Arab Institute of Business Leaders, and it will particularly be covering the importance of the public-private partnership to foster the success and sustainability of university career centers and enhance their performance. So this is organized today. We are our lovely host, dear hosts, Education for Employment, EFE-Tunisie, and Columbia Global Center Tunisia, and of course the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research and the ESEO. So I'm not going to take more time. We're already starting 5 minutes late, so I'm going to present our guests for the opening. For the introduction and welcoming speech, our guest of honor, His Excellency Mr. Slim Shura, Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research, Mr. Ron Bruder, that is joining us, the founder and chairman of the Global Board of Education for Employment, EFE, Attorney Donia Louz, chairman of the board of EFE-Tunisie, and she's going to be talking about EFE-Tunisie's role in fostering youth employment and entrepreneurship in Tunisia. Mrs. Amel Bouchammewi, founding member of Columbia Global Center Tunis, and she's going to be introducing the role that they have played in the support of the business community to CGC Tunis, and the idea behind inviting Columbia to Tunisia. It's a very, very interesting story that we'll hear in a few minutes. I think we're going to be starting now with the welcome speech, official welcome speech of His Excellency, Mr. Slim Shura, Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So good morning, US, and good afternoon, Tunisia. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research. I have a very poor English, so sorry for that. Let me thank first Mr. Ron Bruder, the founder of and chairman of Education for Employment, Attorney Donia Louz, chairman of the board of EFE-Tunisia, Mrs. Amel Bouchammewi, okay, for founding member, Columbia Global Center Tunis. Not forgetting also Mrs. Lamia Shafi, Mr. Yusuf Sharif, and Eugenia Megel, and also not forgetting Professor Lisa Anderson. Thank you so much for your contribution and for supervising these excellent students, okay, that are in front of me. Presentation, so that you will, we're expecting a presentation from you on the findings, as well as also the recommendations, okay, on a study on the 4Cs, okay, career centers here in Tunisia. Thank you, Professor Lassad Mzghani, the DG of University Renovation at the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research, and also CEO Majdi Hassan, Arab Institute of Business Leaders. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. We are in the heart of the reform of the higher education and scientific research system in Tunisia. 4 pillars, mainly 4 pillars. Okay, we're working, okay, on our action for the next 5 years. The first pillar is to improve quality for better employment and self-employment. Second is on research and innovation. The third pillar is practically on governance of the higher education institutes. So in particular, we're talking about universities and faculties, and also university life, okay, on campus. Let me just mention that in 2014, and this is with the U.S. Embassy in Tunisia, I personally conducted a proposal. So I submitted a proposal for funding. This is within the program which we called University Linkage Program, and we won 3 big programs of university linkages. One with MIT, one with Texas A&M University. That's my school where I got my PhD from, and of course, with Columbia University. So it's really a great pleasure to see the fruit, okay, of these proposals that we submitted in 2014. That this proposal is giving fruits, is growing, and this is thanks all the teams of Columbia University, also EFE that contributed a lot, okay, to this program, and also Columbia Global Centers. I believe that we have the centers in Tunisia. We worked too much, okay. We had several difficulties, but at the end now we have a Columbia Global Center, as it was, I think, we still in Jordan. Thank you so much. I remember, Yusuf, you worked very hard with Mrs. Bouchanawi, and thank you so much, okay, for establishing this okay, center in Tunisia. Let me mention that it is important, and we are very proud, okay, to have the career centers, okay. That's what we named them in the beginning, okay. Now they become 4Cs because we are working, okay, on providing training, okay, to improve soft skills, okay, for our students, as we are concerned about our students in pipe, as we are also talking about fresh graduates. And the same thing that is also, and this is because of the crisis due to COVID-19, the percentage rate, okay, is going to be increased. That's, I mean, unfortunately, because people are losing jobs, okay, and this not in Tunisia only, it's almost everywhere in the world. So our interest, okay, also to be able that to reconvert, I mean, to basically to offer additional training to these students targeted to opportunities of employment specifically at the regions. And when we talk about regions, we're talking about 24 governorates in Tunisia. So this for us is one of the pillar of the reform of the higher education system, is to be able to orient and reform the career the curricula. So this is, we need to improve curricula targeted to of course employment and also opportunities for self-employment specifically at the regions. As you know that the 4Cs were initially established during the academic year 2012-2013. There are more than 150 4Cs in all 14 universities. The number is relatively very small with regard to the US, but 14 universities for us, very important universities, and specifically that we are very proud to see that now our universities are ranked worldwide. This is very important, and these are actually basically found in 24 governors of the country. The activities are developed with many national and international companies and partners such as EFE and USAID, that I take this opportunity to thank the US government for their full support of Tunisia, and specifically the support of the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research, and other countries, namely I would just maybe name some of them, but there are actually a large number of countries, that are supporting Tunisia, specifically for the 4Cs program, Germany, Canada, UK, and France. Our general objective is to improve employability of future graduates by strengthening the offer of training and support services. Today, we would like to enhance the performance of the 4Cs and ensure their sustainability. It's very, very important. Now, the number is very good, they're all in all regions, but we need to make them operational, and targeted, as I mentioned, to priorities of the regions where these 4Cs exist. We would like to strengthen the mission of the 4Cs by extending its activities to employment and job matching, and this is also very important, the importance of initiating and establishing platforms where you have the offer and demand. So that's also something of importance for the 4Cs. Revisit the organization of 4Cs by giving the structure and the tools to be more flexible, performant, and accountable. Redefine also the governance of the 4C network for better overall performance. Once more, so there's basically an initial mission, but because again, we have to improve these 4Cs, so that also they will be in service, to a lot of graduates, who graduate from universities, but unfortunately, they don't have jobs. So this is also another mission that we would like to add to these 4Cs. Once more, thank you for your support. Thank for Columbia University. Thanks to our students, to be able to do this, to conduct, this study, and I'll be more than glad, of course, to hear from you about the findings and recommendations. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Excellency, Mr. Slim Shura, Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research, for these opening remarks. We're going to be talking again, I'm sure, about the 4Cs. I would like to welcome all the people that joined us and that have joined us, and all the people watching on different platforms and Facebook Live. So, and I'm already getting questions, so I'm taking care of your questions. We will have a specific session for that later. So now I would like to hear from Mr. Ron Bruder. Thank you for joining us, founder and chairman of the Global Board of Education for Employment. And I would have two quick questions for you, Mr. Ron. First, why did you start EFE? That's, I think, an easy one to ask, but difficult one to answer.
It's a complicated one at that, yes.
And what is your vision with all your different teams for EFE in the next 5 years? The floor is yours. We have 5 minutes for that.
5 minutes? I can do it in 5 minutes. Thank you so much. Pleasure. I started EFE because I realized that people in the world did not have the opportunities that I did. I grew up in not a good area in Brooklyn, New York. And with student loans and a little bit of hard work, got 2 master's degrees and built several companies and became a leading builder of shopping centers. And I also spent some time in Ireland. And I saw in the late 1990s how the attitude between the Catholics and the Protestants changed radically when they had opportunity. And I was also seeing what's going on in the Middle East. And I believe that the difference between a successful society and a society that doesn't function is for youth to have jobs. And as we know, the youth in the Middle East have the highest unemployment rate in the world, also the lowest rate of employment for women. And so we came to the conclusion that if we could build standalone foundations, which we've done now in 9 countries, we could move the needle. We could give the youth the opportunity that they need so they could thrive and their countries could thrive. We have to date over 108,000 graduates, and we're looking to grow that more. In terms of where we'd like to see the foundation go, it's our aspiration to move the needle on the education system, to set a model that through replication and scalability will change how education is delivered in the Middle East. Right now, as a lot of us are aware, the education system does not meet the needs of the labor market. And so each of our foundations are locally run, locally operated, and it's the CEO and the local chairman and local board that make the decisions as to what curriculums are to be taught and how they're going to be translated into jobs. We have relationships now with over 3,000 employers, and we hope to grow that. In terms of where we expect it to be in 5 years, I expect us to get to the point where we really can see impact, where we're now training millions of youth, getting them into the labor market, and enabling them to be gainfully employed. By doing so, I think we can change the outcome of the Middle East. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bruder. Very interesting. The first time we talked, we already had to chat before, and we had an interview. The first time we talked, you told me, I see things very simple. Like you and I have jobs. I want every young person in the world to have a job. So that's the EFE is simple, basic goal.
Thank you.
It's a huge objective, but I'm sure that
achievable.
Exactly.
Achievable.
Before going to our next speaker, do you have any specific message for the public that is watching us, not only from Tunis, but from many other cities around the world?
My message is global. The future of society will be to a large degree dependent upon how well you educate and train your youth. Also important in the United States, quite frankly, we're falling down on the job here. We are not the global leader that we was 30 years ago, and I think one of the main reasons that we are not going ahead as quickly as well as we should is our educational systems are not where they need to be. And so I think every country needs to look at its education system, spend less on military and more on education. If you want to become a powerful country, it's not by how many bombs you have or how many nuclear weapons, it's how many PhDs you have.
And I think I'm talking under the control of His Excellency Slim Shura. I think we have many PhDs, and we have those skills in Tunisia. So that's very good news. We are very optimistic. That's why we are optimistic about our future and
pleasure.
The region's future. Thank you, Mr. Bruder. Please stay with us. We move on with our next speaker in this opening let's say, a session, attorney Donia Hadalouz, who's chairman of the board of EFE-Tunisie. And so now we had like the big macro vision of EFE, why it was founded, what are the objectives, where do they want to go for the next years. So let's focus more about what EFE is doing in Tunisia and its role in fostering youth employment and entrepreneurship in Tunisia. So Attorney Donia Hadalouz, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Minister, and thank you for all the attendees. EFE-Tunisie, of course, and thanks to Ron, who is the founder of EFE, has exactly the same goal than EFE Global. EFE-Tunisia, we have registered EFE-Tunisia just after the revolution in 2011, and I have the honor to be the chairwoman of EFE-Tunisia from 2014. It's a long time. You know, in Tunisia, EFE, we have placed in jobs, and we are very proud of it, 2,500 youth. And we have trained at university on employability skills, 13,000 youth. So as Ron said, the most important thing is to find jobs for these young people. And, you know, within each, let's say, 3 months, we organize a graduation ceremony where we deliver the certificates to these young people, and where also we place them on jobs. And I think the most important thing that I ever heard is when they say EFE changed our lives. And it's true. I think the most important thing, of course, is education, but is to have a job. And this is what EFE is working for. I thank, of course, Ron for his dedication for Tunisia, and Lamia and all her team, who is doing a very, very good job. EFE is working very strongly with the Ministry of Higher Education, and because we believe in EFE that education has to be done. But education is important. It's clearly important, but it is important when it is done for someone who is going to get a job. And unfortunately, as the Mr. Minister said, we have too many young people who do not have a job. And of course, with this COVID crisis, unfortunately, unemployment is going to increase. And during the COVID, we've exchanged a little bit with Ron, and saying now we are going to face new challenges. How are we going to find jobs and new jobs, I suppose, for all these young people who are today at home? I think also it is important for us to change the mentalities and to encourage young people for short technical studies, because we really need that. We don't need all to be doctors or lawyers or professors. I mean, we have to change the mentalities. We have to train young people, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is to get a job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney, for your answers. We'll be going back to you later, probably for the Q&A. So some people are sending their questions on the page. We're trying to collect all that. I just wanted to tell them. So we're following your questions, and you can here use the specific conversational Q&A icon you have on the same screen. Okay, so now to move on, we have our last but not least speaker of the opening remarks session, Mrs. Amel Bouchamawi, the founding member of Columbia Global Centers, and she's going to tell us the interesting story of how came the idea behind inviting, what was behind the idea of inviting Columbia to Tunis. Mrs. Bouchamawi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Wassim. Hi again to everyone, but I didn't have the opportunity earlier to say hello to Minister Shura, whom I used to work with, to collaborate with when I used to chair AmCham, and I'm very happy that now he's appointed as a new minister. And I would like to say also hello to Ron Ruder. It's been a long time that we didn't meet. Well, the idea of Columbia Global Center actually came to our, when came out, the idea came out when I used to chair AmCham, and thanks to all the board of AmCham and all the members of AmCham, We were able to host delegates from the University of Columbia under the leadership of Professor Kamel Jdidi, a professor in the University of Columbia. He's from Tunisia. So every year we used to host them, and AmCham used to host them. And then we thought about the possibility of maybe open, like a university here or something similar to that. But we understood that it won't be possible, as it is the case of other US universities all over the world. So in 2015, the President Lee Bollinger, the Dean of University of Columbia, paid a visit to Tunis, and AmCham hosted him with all the delegation of University of Columbia. And at that dinner, AmCham board members suggested the idea to open Columbia Global Center, because that was the only possibility on how to have a presence of Columbia, the University of Columbia in Tunisia. So this is the 9th center in Tunisia. The 9th center of Global Center, or Columbia Global Center, has been opened in Tunis. And it took us a long time to do it. We thought about this in 2015, and we had to do a big lobbying, because we wanted to have a center, not a node, as the idea was initially. So, and after with all the papers and, that we had to prepare, and, all the permission and things like this, we were able to have the center open, legally opened on in 2018. I mean, I'm really happy that the collaboration between the Columbia Global Center here in Tunis and with all the associations like Education for Employment here is really very good, and we were able to have this synergy among those networks, and I think this is good for Tunisia. Yeah, so this is about it. Can you hear me?
Thank you very much. We can hear you, of course. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Bouchamewi, Amel Bouchamewi, founding member, Columbia Global Centers, Tunis. I've been there almost since the beginning by chance. So I know how important for you is this story, and how you managed to make it happen and invite Columbia to Tunisia. I know there are more details maybe that you won't share today with us, but it's a really interesting story. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Bouchamewi. So to move on, this was kind of our opening or welcome session. We'll move on now about a specific session about the partnership between EFE-Tunisie and Columbia Global Centers Tunis. So now that we know the macro, we know how did all this exist. Let's see how they're doing in day-to-day basis. And our next three speakers are going to be Mrs. Lamia Shafei, CEO of EFE-Tunisie, Mr. Youssef Sharif, head of Columbia Global Center Tunis, and Mrs. Eugenia McGill, director SIPA Workshop in Development Practice, Columbia University. So we'll start first with a lady, with Mrs. Lamia Shafei, CEO of EFE-Tunisie, to know more about this partnership. This session with the three people is going to take us 10 minutes, so it's almost a 3-minute for each one. Mrs. Shafei, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Wasim. Thank you for your introduction. Actually, first, I would like to express my sincere and grateful thanks to our honored guests. Thank you, Professor Stim Shura, our minister, for your time and for your interest to join our webinar. To our founder, Ron Bruder, who also joining us, Attorney Maître Louz and Mrs. Bouchamewi. We're very privileged to have you with us today, and also to our distinguished speakers and partners, Mrs. Eugenia McGill, Professor Liza Anderson, our partner friend, Mr. Youssef Sharif, and Dr. Majdi Hassan, and also our wonderful and amazing team from Columbia SIPA University. And also I would like to thank all our guests and participants that are joining us today from different countries of the world. We're very delighted to organize this webinar today with our partners. So first, I would like to echo our founder Ron Bruder and attorney Maître Dunia Louz to say that at EFE-Tunisie, with the generous support of our donors, we design and implement market-driven and sustainable projects with measurable and key performance indicators to ensure the placement of the youth that we train. So we do believe in the potential of Tunisian youth, and it's our role to help build a better future for our youth. And also we try to make also a systemic change in the educational system. We also build strong partnerships with public and private partners. And today we are very, very proud to have our partners, the Ministry of Higher Education, Columbia, Global Center Tunis and Columbia University, and also the Institute of Arab Business Leaders. So this is an example of an impactful and successful partnership. I would like first to give a few words about our partnership with and collaboration with Columbia Global Centers. I would like to thank particularly Mrs. Amen Bouchamoui, who initiated this partnership. Actually, the collaboration with Columbia Global Centers is covering different activities relating to employment and entrepreneurship for youth. But we had this great opportunity to collaborate with Columbia University SIPA to submit a project. And of course, in connection with the collaboration with the Ministry of Higher Education, we had this project to cover an important topic, which is the success and sustainability of career centers. So today we are very happy to share the wonderful and amazing work that has been done with the team from Colombia. And I would like to say that they are now representing different countries in the world. They are participating from different countries. And we are very proud of the partnership with the Ministry of Higher Education. Thank you, Professor Slim Shura, Excellency, for your support. Thank you, Professor Lesmat Nusrani. We are very really proud of the partnership with you and very grateful to your support. And also today we have the participation of Dr. Majdi Hassan from ESE, representing the private sector, which is very important. Also it's an occasion to announce that we just launched a national study on employment and entrepreneurship in Tunisia post-COVID. So we certainly take into account the results of the discussions from today's webinar. So just to build the linkage with this webinar and to say that this public-private partnership is very important for us. And our main purpose is really to build the linkage between the two worlds to ensure the employment of our youth. So thank you very much and enjoy the presentation, and best of luck to our students for the presentation afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Mrs. Lamia Chefé, CEO, EFE-Tunisie. We move forward now with Mr. Youssef Sharif, Head of Columbia Global Centers Tunis. Youssef, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Excellency Mr. Slim Shura, and good afternoon to all our guests. I'm very pleased to be in this webinar and see the results of the SIPA team's work. I think it's a high-level study that we trust will be useful to the Ministry of Higher Education. This is also an opportunity to congratulate the students on their graduation, and we as Columbia Tunis are very proud to see a Tunisian among them, Fatem Ben Hamza. Now, I won't add much to what our esteemed partner and supporter, Madame Bouchamevi, said, and to what Ms. McGill will say, but just briefly to say that this project, this study, shows a continued interest from Columbia University to work in Tunisia and with Tunisians, a partnership that actually started more than half a century ago with SIPA, more exactly and that is continuing today with the help of people like Madame Bouchamewi, Ziad Boussati from African West, and Elias Parayana and others actually who've been very supportive to our implementation in Tunisia. We as global centers are actually, we're 9 around the globe, and the Tunis Center is the 9th that opened in the world. We work as a bridge between the university from one side and the regions where we operate. In our case, it's mostly Tunisia, but also to a certain extent, North and West Africa. Our role as Columbia Global Centers Tunis, therefore, is to facilitate cooperation between Columbia departments and institutions from one side and Tunisian organizations, meaning Tunisian academic organization, professional, civil society, and so on. We are in a way like a bridge that caters to the two sides. So to end, what I want to say is that we hope to expand our work in the region in the upcoming years. And the study that is being presented today is the perfect example of what why Colombia can be a good partner for Tunisia. This study will show you that this partnership between Columbia University and Tunisia is strong, sustainable, and productive. Again, congratulations to everyone, and thank you for the report that you just made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharif, Youssef Sharif, head of Columbia Global Centers Tunis. Now, I would like to hear from Mrs. Eugenia McGill, Director SIPA Workshop in Development Practice, Columbia University. Then we'll move on to the next session, but I'm really looking forward to hear from you, Mrs. McGill. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Wasim. And I'd also like to thank EFE and Lamia in particular, as well as the Columbia Global Center in Tunis, Youssef in particular, for co-hosting this event. And also would like to thank Minister Shura and all the other guests, as well as the audience, for joining us to hear from our team on the results of their study. I also would like to thank both Lamia and Youssef for the opportunity to have a team of our students work on this project with them. This is the second time in just the last few years that we've had the opportunity to have a team of our graduate students work with a partner organization in Tunisia. Thanks to Youssef for facilitating this opportunity. Last year, we were delighted to work with the International Organization for Migration Tunis office. And so we were thrilled when Youssef introduced us to Lamia and Lamia proposed this particular piece of work. It seemed particularly appropriate since it was focusing on higher education and career services in particular, because our students could certainly do the comparative research and analysis and policy recommendations, but they're also users of career services. They're university graduates themselves, so they have used career services at their own home universities, and at a graduate school, they were also using career services at our own school, the School of International and Public Affairs at SIPA. And in fact, as I think they may mention in their presentation, one of the case studies that they reviewed was their own career services office at SIPA. So this is a project that's part of the program in the Economic and Political Development concentration at our school. It's been running for about 30+ years. It's a core part of our curriculum to give our students in the second year of their master's program an opportunity to apply the technical and theoretical perspectives, the skills that they've been developing and enhancing to the benefit of an external organization where they can do some concrete applied research, analysis, and consultation, and deliver hopefully some useful findings and recommendations to improve the programming or policies or forward thinking for the organization, as well as capping their own experience at SIPA. So with that, I'd like to again thank Lamia and Youssef for the opportunity to partner with you this year. We look forward to future opportunities to work with EFE and other organizations in Tunisia through our workshop. And with that, I'll be delighted to have you hear from our students directly about the results of their study.
Thank you very much, Mrs. McGill, Director SIPA Workshop in Development Practice, Columbia University. Thank you very much. So now we move to the next last session of our webinar. It's the presentation session, the presentation of study findings, and later on the discussion. And but before moving, I would like to ask two questions for whoever wants to answer them, maybe even if we have a Q&A session later, but maybe these questions can be asked now so we can move on properly. So one is for you, Mr. Minister, Said Wazir. Someone is asking about your strategies. What are the strategies that will be employed by you, Mr. Minister, to involve the high number of PhD in Tunisia? And I would like to ask also another question. How do we become a trainer for education for EFE, for education for employment? So this anywhere from EFE could answer that. I have also other questions sent to my own feed. It's about the youth that should be doing more trainings and to acquire more different skills. And this is a very huge missing link. They're saying if I'm translating properly, Ahlam will do it probably better than me. And also about Mr. Mohamed Wajdi is saying, for all this to succeed, all this partnership that you are talking about, that's why I wanted to ask these questions at this moment of the webinar. For all this to succeed, he says that inclusion is very important, and specifically cultural inclusion. So this is open for anyone who wants to jump in and answer. There was a specific one for the minister and the others, if you would like to comment on this, and then we move on for the presentations. We will take 3-4 minutes for this. We have time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I believe that this is, we are in the heart of this problem, okay, for having a large number of PhD graduates, okay, without employment. I mean, this is historic, you know, anybody, okay, who receive a PhD generally think about university as being a faculty member, okay, at the university, okay? I know that in the US, please correct me if I'm mistaken, but let's say probably around 70%, okay, of PhD graduates, okay, from US universities, okay, look for jobs, okay, at let's say industry, you know, economic, let's say, you know, firms and so on. Where they can, of course, practice, you know, research and development, you know, that's the activity. One of the things, and generally, they have a very, you know, they have difficulty, of course, so finding a faculty position, okay, at universities. And I still know that generally, okay, most of our PhD students, okay, in the US, okay, look for jobs, okay, at industry. This is the case in also in South Korea that I know currently, I mean, that I know myself, okay, really a high percentage of them, okay, go to industry. Well, this is actually the new culture, okay, that and the trend, okay, for Tunisia is to be able to orient our PhD graduates, okay, towards industry. And this is an MOU that I will sign personally with Utica next Monday, okay, for things related, okay, to employment of PhD graduates, okay, at research and development industry, specifically in ICT, in which, okay, there is really offers. There are a lot of demands on that, and just for your, you know, own information, ICT research and development, let's say research, okay, in Tunisia is ranked #1, okay, in the Arab world. So really, we are very strong in ICT, and this is why we have always, you know, not sufficient, okay, graduates, okay, to be to basically, you know, to fit in the, you know, in local industries in ICT, okay, in Tunisia. This is very important that we should orient more our students, okay, to thinking about launching their startups, okay, their research and development, okay, projects. They can be also employed, okay, at local industries. This is one. Second is that we are also, this is within the strategy, okay, of supporting the quality, education quality, okay, at the private universities in Tunisia, okay. And there will be a great number, okay, of PhD graduates, okay, who will be recruited, hopefully. So this is also second item that I will have you with Utica, okay, to manage, okay, a recruitment process of a large number of PhD graduates, okay, for the next, let's say, 1 to 2 years. And this is also a very good thing. Another thing is with regard to, in addition to the higher education and scientific research, so whether they can be employed at the universities or research centers in Tunisia, but also we have other sectors such as, agriculture, such as ICT, such as, of course, we talk about environment, okay, and so many sectors. There are about 20 sectors, okay, who can recruit PhD graduates. As you know, if you're thinking of a strategy, okay, for these sectors, okay, specifically when you talk about R&D, so PhD students, okay, are the most suitable, okay, and skilled, Tunisians, okay, who can be occupy, okay, these positions, okay, when you talk about putting a strategy for these sectors. So plenty of things. We are in a dynamic, time in order to be able to fit these students, okay, or these graduates, okay, PhD graduates, and this is the most important thing. We don't want to send them away, okay, because we can always find solutions for these high-skilled, PhD graduates, okay. We would like to maintain them in Tunisia, and this actually, resources, human resources, to keep them in Tunisia, to be able to develop a new Tunisia, that can develop science, technology, and innovation, okay, in North Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister. Any other comments before we move on to the presentation session? If anyone wants to jump in for a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Wasim. Just to maybe to answer very, very quickly the question relating to the how to become a trainer at EFE-Tunisie, just to say that we usually what we do is we launch call for applications, and we do pay a lot of attention to the selection process. We have specific criteria, and we do focus on professional expertise and knowledge about the market, the job market. And also, we do provide new pedagogical approaches and very interactive training. I would like also to add to what His Excellency Minister Slim Shura mentioned earlier about the importance of ICT. So at the level of EFE, now we are trying really to work on the digital skills. Also, we digitized all our curricula and training, and we are now focusing on new jobs. So I mentioned earlier about the new study. We are launching the national study about employment and entrepreneurship that we are conducting with our partner ESE. So the objective of this study will be actually to identify niche markets and new jobs, new opportunities for our youth, especially in these particular circumstances after COVID. So now we're trying really to tap into new potential sectors and really to work on these sectors to help place youth in jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I think we'll be moving on now for the presentation of study findings and discussion. So we'll start this session with Professor Lisa Anderson from Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. She's going to tell us more about the study methodology and approach, and she has for that about 4 minutes. The floor is yours, Professor Anderson.
Thank you very much. It's a delight to be with you all, and I particularly appreciate the minister's willingness to spend some time with us, because this is a truly innovative and clever project. On a personal note, let me just say that this month I am celebrating the 45th year since my first visit to Tunis, and I was hoping I would be there this month again, but it'll happen. I also want to say that I think EFE as an organization is quite an extraordinary initiative, and I want to congratulate Ron Bruder, whom I met while I was working in Egypt, which also has an EFE, and he there demonstrated, as has been made clear in Tunis as well, that this vision that education can be connected to employment and indeed should be connected to employment is really very, very important. And career centers are a way of developing that connection. So I would have agreed to advise this group without knowing anything about them. But in fact, this is an extremely strong group, a very good team. And so before the pandemic locked everyone down, several of the students on the team visited Tunis, worked with EFE and people from the ministry to get a sense of the scope of the project, came back with some very good ideas, which is fortunate because, of course, the second group of students who were expected to visit Tunis were unable to do so. And we ended up working on 4 different continents over the course of the semester. In Asia, Africa, Europe, and North America. The students were scattered. And they did an extraordinary job, not only in being able to communicate and develop their own work process, but as you'll see, in developing some really important, I think, and useful recommendations for EFE, for Tunis, and for the development of career education. I want to note one thing that I think you should pay particular attention to. They developed of their own accord a performance assessment rubric, a mechanism by which career centers can be compared and assessed, that we actually think could go well beyond this project. This is something new. Career centers are themselves a relative innovation in higher education. They are well known in the United States, but not very well known in the rest of the world. And this is really a contribution to the entire body of literature on how career centers can actually work closely with the private sector in providing opportunities for students. So I just want to congratulate them all. I don't want to take any more of their time because this is their presentation. It's a great project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So this is about the approach, and I think we're going to know right now much more about the findings and the presentation of the study findings and the results. So the study is about building a sustainable career center model in Tunisia. It was done and made by Columbia SIPA project team. There are a few of them here. Thank you again, Mr. Professor Anderson. So let's move on to the presentation. You have 20 minutes for that. Faten and the team. I asked for 15, but I think 20 is good. You can, I'm sure if you stick to 20, that's very good. But we're looking forward to know more about it. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. We'll try to do our best. I'm going to use this opportunity also to thank everyone who spoke prior to us, and thank you for the chance to work on this project. So as mentioned several times, our project is about building the capacity of career centers in state universities in Tunisia. And by building capacity, we mean improving the employment outcomes of those centers. We, the Columbia students from SIPA, developed this project in partnership with EFE. And throughout this presentation, we will walk you through some information about the unemployment situation in Tunisia pre-COVID-19. For anybody watching us who is not familiar with the unemployment situation, we'll then move on to the findings of our research, then to roadmap for the solutions that we are recommending. And last but not least, we will try to thank everyone who's been helping us in this project, and it's many of them. First of all, let me tell you about our terrific team. You just heard Miss Dr. Lisa Anderson, who was a faculty advisor on this project. My name is Faten, and my colleagues are Anu, Michelle, Paolo, Gabe, and Priyanka, and all of us worked on this project. We also talked already a little bit about EFE. So just to reiterate what's been said, EFE develops and implements demand-driven training programs for university graduates. So far across the MEDA region, and so far this organization was able to work with more than 100,000 young people across the region, placing 73% of them in jobs, which is very impressive. So if we dive a little bit into the unemployment situation in Tunisia, and again, these numbers were pre-COVID, as we conducted our study from November to May. When we looked at the unemployment rate on average in the world, according to the World Bank, as you can see on the left side of the slide, the average rate was at 5%. In Tunisia, the unemployment rate on average was at 16%, also according to the World Bank. But when we looked at the youth unemployment in particular, it was at 36%. And there are three main characteristics that truly define this youth unemployment in the country. First of all, it's the age of the unemployed people. 85% of unemployed people are under the age of 35. Then it's gender. Unemployment is particularly high among educated young women. And the third characteristic is about the education. So the unemployment increases with the education level. Basically, the more you study, the less likely you are to get a job after you graduate. 40% of the unemployed people, young people, actually have university graduates, and 3/4 of them are women. Many initiatives are active in Tunisia and have been active for several years to solve these unemployment issues and facilitate the access to jobs, to job market. One of them being this project called Jobs, in which our project was part of, that was created and implemented in part by EFE and the Ministry of Higher Education, and also USAID, to support the employment reform strategy for the 4C centers. Our mission within this project was threefold. Our task was threefold. We first started with a diagnosis where we identified key areas for improvement within the 4C network itself. We then moved on to deliver a benchmark report. So we looked at best practices in career centers around the world and try to see what could be useful for Tunisia and what kind of insights we could use. And finally, we developed a portfolio of recommendations and a roadmap on how to implement the solutions to improve the employment outcomes of the 4Cs.
Thanks, Fatem. I can take it from here. So in this section, I'll just provide a brief overview of the main findings of our research, and then the rest of my teammates will deep dive after that. So as Fatem said, we had three main tasks: the diagnosis, the benchmarking, and the recommendations. For the diagnosis, through extensive fieldwork in Tunis and Jendouba and connecting with Tunisian officials, volunteers, and students, we realized that there were three key areas, essentially, where the 4C network could improve. The first was in governance. So while the 4Cs were comprehensive in coverage across Tunisia, the leadership was non-standardized and generally volunteer-based. The second characteristics was access to opportunities. While the 4Cs were very good at imparting theoretical skills to students, we realized that the external legal and corporate framework in Tunisia created little appetite for internships or work experience opportunities. And in terms of network building, we also noticed that engagement with students could create more impact if it came sooner and if the 4Cs cast a broader net to include alumni and other stakeholders. As a result of these three characteristics, there were three main effects. Could you go back to the previous slide, please? Thank you. The first was that there was unequal development across the 4Cs. So certain 4Cs ended up more developed, especially if they were in cities, than, for example, the 4Cs that were more in the interiors. The second was that students, while they received theoretical skills, did not really have the practical experience that companies were looking for. And the third was that the students were not effectively prepared, or less effectively prepared in terms of a job recruitment mindset for job searching and corporate culture. Slide, please. So with this in mind, we went through desk research and interviews with many different career centers around the world across many countries to see what we could find as the 13 best practices of a career center. And we organized these similarly under governance opportunities and building the network. As you can see, governance was mainly around the administrative structure. Opportunities was about the tangible services that the career centers, in this case, the 4Cs, would be providing. And building the network was around looking at who and which stakeholders the 4Cs should be engaging with. Next slide, please. So now that we had the benchmark, we had to sort of refine our recommendations to actually fit the Tunisian context. And to do this, we looked at each recommendation and understood what would be the impact of performance on the 4Cs specifically, And also, how feasible would it be to implement these in Tunisia, looking at the external environment and framework? And so we looked at it, we evaluated each of these best practices by giving them a quantitative score on an impact and implementation baseline. And if you can go to the next slide, please. We narrowed down these 7 recommendations that were very high in impact and in implementation. And to give you an overview, in governance, these were reforms to the staffing structure, securing independent funding, and also enhancing monitoring and evaluation tools. In terms of opportunities, these were enhancing the existing platforms that the 4Cs already had and were working with, and also finding ways to create accredited work experience. And then in terms of network building, we encouraged multi-stakeholder engagement and also engagement with previous students who are now graduated. And moving forward, the rest of my teammates will pick into each of these recommendations and give you a little bit more color as to how Tunisia can implement them.
Thank you very much, Priyanka. Now we're going to present the 7 recommendations. I will address the first 4, and then Michelle will present the last 3. So the first recommendation in the field of governance is the staffing structure. Nowadays, the 4C is composed of a central staff located in the Ministry of Higher Education with 3 employees that share their working time with other tasks within the ministry. And each local chapter is run in a voluntary basis by professors and students. So by analyzing this set of incentives and the level of performance, we end up recommending 2 recommendations. The first is the placement of an executive director in the central staff, fully dedicated to manage the network and oversee the local chapters. And the second recommendation is hiring at least 1 full-time employee for each local chapter, a person with experience on human resource and employment. So by doing that, we believe there is a greater operational and programmatic consistency across the entire network. As well, it's also an essential predecessor for the implementation of other recommendations. The second recommendation within the field of governance is securing independent funding. Nowadays, the resource to operate the network comes from the Ministry of Higher Education, as any other part in the world. There is constraints on that in terms of bureaucracy or even political change in the political landscape. And we are recommending, aiming at a great autonomy on fundraising that is directly related with performance. We are recommending the establishment of a central endowment fund to be managed by the executive secretary of the network that I said before. So by having this central endowment fund, we are creating a tool that gives flexibility on planning and fundraising for the implementation of innovative practices. It's important to highlight that the legal status of this fund should be completely autonomous from the public streams, from the public revenues of the budget from the Ministry of Higher Education. So it's a special fund that all the investment, all the resources should be allocated for the 4C networks. And we will also recommend the establishment of a set of rules on investment, withdrawal, and usage of this resource, considering at the same time the percentage of contribution from each local chapter, but also egalitarian principles, considering the inequality across regions in Tunisia. So the third and last recommendation in the field of governance is monitoring and evaluation tools. It's, as Professor Lisa said before, during our benchmark research, we will end up developing a tool called a performance assessment rubric, where we have qualitative questions coupled with quantitative data that create metrics and scores for each category in terms of governance, access to opportunity, and community engagement. This was a great first exercise. It's easy to adapt for the local chapters. So we are recommending the implementation on this in each local chapter, but also as a tool for the executive director inside the central staff to better oversee the performance of the career centers. So the first recommendation in the field of access to opportunities is enhancing online platforms. Nowadays, the Ministry of Higher Education made a partnership with a private company of digital services. They already have a portal. By analyzing the performance of that portal, it's a good start point to say, to be clear, but there are space for operational improvement. There's some administrative bottlenecks. And in the end, our recommendation aims at enhancing partnership with private companies to better engage them in the platform for job matching, and also improve the engagement of local chapters. Since they are running a volunteer basis, they are not well engaged in some local chapters. So if you expand the network and give access to private partners and the local chapter, you can have a better usage of this platform. So now we're gonna pass the word to Michelle. She will address the last 3 recommendations.
Thank you, Paulo. So our next recommendation under access to opportunities is accrediting work experience in the university setting, not just at the master's or PhD level, but also undergrad or baccalaureate level. So through our January and March trip, we discovered that there was a mismatch of education and skills being taught at the university and then what is being required in the job market. So we understand that there's an extreme need to increase students' access to work opportunities where they're in the work atmosphere to gain these soft skills. Additionally, we believe that accrediting work experience would help continue to build the 4C network and engage multiple stakeholders within the private and public sector and at the community level. So in terms of implementation, this would be, this means to establish an academic credit system where students are given credit for formal work experience. And we call this work experience so that it expands beyond the traditional internship or fellowship level to also include volunteer opportunities. We also learned through our study in Tunisia that there wasn't a appetite or culture for internships. So we thought to expand it to volunteer opportunities so that this can also include opportunities with civil society, which plays a large role in the Tunisian society. Also, we realize that this is mandatory. Internships are mandatory in some programs, but we want to expand this to different sectors besides just technology and sciences and business. Next slide, please. In our building the network category, we are recommending increasing multi-stakeholder engagement. So this includes engagement with private and public sector, professors, academic counselors, alumni, university clubs, even Tunisian diaspora. And understanding that engagement with various stakeholders will facilitate and increase information sharing, but also resource training and resource sharing within the different diverse sectors. We also think that engaging different and various stakeholders will help ensure that the university curriculum within Tunisia includes the learning or the apprehension of different skills that are required in the job market. And by building these relationships and creating formal partnerships, we also think that this can create an environment for funding opportunities for our recommended endowment fund. So realizing that there's already engagement with various stakeholders within the 4Cs, we are recommending to make it more formalized and more consistent and just enhance the dialogue. So this could be through various communication media, such as site visits, lectures, workshops where someone from the private sector comes into the classroom for a day and talks to the students, and they're exposed to different soft skills or what it's like in that particular industry. Also creating regular meetings between the 4Cs and universities, or even the private sector and universities, to make sure that proper curriculum is being taught. And we're also suggesting creating formal partnerships in the form of contracts with the various stakeholders mentioned. Next slide, please. Thank you. So lastly, our last of the 7 critical recommendations is alumni engagement. I'm going to read from one of our interviews at the University of Sao Paulo. I quote, "Alumni must be seen both as users and service providers for career centers." And we really believe that this embodies and really captures the importance of alumni engagement, and why we kind of chose to have a separate recommendation from multi-stakeholder dialogue. We believe that alumni really bridge the gap between the university setting and then in the private or public sector or job market. They can help provide an atmosphere where they're teaching students and providing their experience now in the job market, but having studied in the same university and perhaps gone through the same program. We also believe by engaging alumni, this will create soft advantages where it helps build the reputation of the university, and then at the same time exposes and gives attention to different organizations. In terms of implementation, we are suggesting to build an alumni database, which doesn't have to be a very extensive technologically advanced database, but rather just creating a list of alumni with their degrees, time of graduation, pertinent contact information. And this list is used as a form of media communication to invite the alumni into the various different events, such as site visits or panels, for example. This will also promote alumni to offer their time as volunteers and perhaps lead to a volunteer mentorship program. So these are all the 7 recommendations, the critical recommendations we have identified. And I will go ahead and pass it to Anu to speak about our roadmap and acknowledgements. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Michelle. So now we're going to talk a little bit to wrap up our presentation with a roadmap for how each of these top 7 recommendations can be broken down into individual pieces in the short, medium, and long term. The objective of this is because we wanted to provide as concrete and implementable solutions as possible with realistic first steps leading to our eventual long-term goals. So over this on the next slide, we'll see our top 7 recommendations divided into implementation pieces in the short, medium, and long term. And I will briefly touch on each of these 7 recommendations, providing examples of how actions can be taken in each of these time periods. So for example, our first recommendation was staffing structure. In order to hire staff in the long term, we first need to, we recommend securing funding for the same. For independent funding, as mentioned before, the first step in the short term would be to establish a legal framework in which this kind of fundraising can be made possible, so that in the long term, this can actually be put into practice and be implemented, so the network can raise autonomous funds. For monitoring and evaluation tools in the short term, as mentioned before in the presentation, we have developed our own performance assessment rubric. That's a very simple Excel tool that can be used immediately. In the long term, this can be built on, and resources, both digital and personnel, can be allocated to ensuring that our monitoring and evaluation tools are implemented across the network. To enhance the use of online platforms in the short term, we recommend that simple things such as just updating the platform can get the ball rolling on encouraging users to engage with the platform. In the long term, based on our analysis of the existing digital tools, we recommend that perhaps technical experts are placed within the ministry to ensure that any bottlenecks that come up with usage at the back end are worked on in real time. Next slide, please. Our next recommendation, which was to accredit work experience for students in the short term, that would begin by having the universities provide this accreditation for any hands-on experience that students are able to get during their time of study. And in the long term, this experience, any kind of work experience can be put on the digital platforms for students to showcase their skills. For multi-stakeholder engagement, we recommend in the short term that simple things like having a list of stakeholders to engage with is made so that possible partnerships can be explored in the long term. For example, private sector partners can be engaged with to provide private sector funding to the career centers. And finally, for our last recommendation, to enhance alumni engagement between alumni and students. In the beginning, simple database can be maintained and an up-to-date list of alumni can be consolidated so that in the long term, mentorship programs between students and alumni is developed so that students have some support while navigating jobs when it's time for them to graduate. Next slide, please. Finally, we'd just like to conclude our presentation by acknowledging everyone who helped make this project possible. We conducted over 40 interviews. This list is not exhaustive. It's only for those that were based in Tunisia itself. We have a longer acknowledgement list in our final report. Due to COVID, I think this list is even more important as we were not able to conduct our field trials as we would have liked to. And so we really thank everyone who provided insight into our project. And with that, we'd like to conclude our presentation and thank you all for providing us the opportunity to share our report findings.
Thank you very much. It's exactly around 20 minutes. Perfect. Thank you all. We will have, there's lots of questions. So let's move on with our last two speakers, and we'll go back for questions and the discussion. Bravo for all this job done and for everyone who have, some of them already connected actually, and we're saying hi to you, so you can read the comments on the page. Now we move on with Professor Lassad Bezrani, Director General at the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research. He's going to have a 5 minutes presentation about the strategy of the ministry to boost the employability of university graduates in Tunisia. Professor Bezrani, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Asim. Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity. I would like to thank Madam Lamia for the idea of transforming a simple, presentation to a webinar with this very important presence of different stakeholders and partners. This is, I think, the way to go. We have to build now on this relationship and consolidate our collaboration. I would like, first of all, to say thank you for the students. It's an excellent job. As a university professor, before I become, Director General in the ministry, I really appreciate the work that was done, the methodology, the findings, the way you presented, the findings, the recommendations, and the roadmap. I assure you that I will take into consideration these results in developing the action plan we are putting in place for, developing the 4 Cs and to support university graduates' employment. We were really working on this, and Madame Lamia knows about this with the support of the project Jobs Tunisia. We are working on 2 folds. In fact, in our strategy, in the Director General, as Director General of the University Renovation. First, we are working on curricula review development so it fits better the need of the local market, but international market in terms of jobs. We're working on the job description, which competencies should be developed and which program should be developed and curricula should be put in place. So we are working on that since last year. We had the reform of the license degree. We're working on other programs at the same time. And we are moving forward on this with the near future, within the next 3 weeks, I would say, we'll have a national workshop to really set up a roadmap on how we are going to do it in the next few months and next few years. The second pillar we are working on to boost, university graduates' employment is the 4 Cs network. We have to develop it. We have to probably redefine or review some of its mission. to extend some, more services or more support that is necessary, or more training. The platform that exists is an excellent tool that should be developed further. We have many ideas. We already discussed these ideas with Madame Lamia already, and Tunisia Jobs project. And in the same way, we are within the next 3 weeks, we'll have another workshop as well, develop a roadmap with precise action plan, where we'll be taking into consideration these recommendations from this panel of students. So in both, I think, all these pillars about developing university employment for the graduates, we are working on both. So as it was said by Minister, I mean, like for the 4Cs, we would like to strengthen the mission of the 4Cs by extending its activities to employment and job matching. And that's by developing the platform further and putting some artificial intelligence tools for job matching between the offer and the demand. We would like also to develop this platform as it becomes the first starting point where high school graduates go to know where to go, which university to go, which program to follow, which diploma, which training to take. So it will be the starting point for high school graduates, and it will be the platform that he or she, I mean the student, will be using during his journey at the university. So it will be the real, I mean, the tool to be used, and that's why we should develop different features in this platform so it becomes more performant. Organizing, the 4Cs. Now we have more than 150 4Cs. How can we imagine, a team, 2 or 3 people within the ministry, or even one person in the ministry can manage all this network? It's impossible. So we need to rethink how we are going to manage this whole network. Should it be organized at each university level, or should it be centralized? So the discussion already started. I already had a meeting with different, stakeholders from the universities to talk about what are the pros and cons of each alternative, and we are moving forward on that. And the workshop we would like to organize will tell us more about where we should go and how we should go about it. Finally, the structure within each 4C. I mean, what you said about, the person who is, who has a dedicated job within the 4C, the team, they're paid, they have real, they're dedicated people for the 4Cs, and how they work together. This is very important. I mean, the internal organization within each 4C, in each university, in each institution, is very important as well. So we are really working on those different aspects, and I was very happy to read, the findings, the report of this group of students to help us, move forward about how to develop this and implement our strategy. So thank you very much. And before I give you the floor back, I would like to say to Yusuf, thank you. Excellent job. But also, I would like to say to Yusuf, let's think together about the next project. Okay, so let's move forward with that. Thank you, Asim, for your excellent job as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yusuf, do you want to answer that? Ready for the next?
Of course, I can be in your office on Monday morning if you want.
Great. Okay. Last but not least, before getting to the questions, Ahlem, if you could help also with that, probably, I don't know if you can help because they're very long, fresh questions. Dr. Majdi Hassan, CEO of the EFE, Arab Institute of Business Leaders, who's going to tell us more about what type of partnership between private sector companies and university career centers to better respond to the needs of the job market. He worked a lot on this topic. I'm sure that we're going to have great answers about that. And he's a teacher himself also, professor. So Majdi Hassan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And it's very interesting to hear the result of the studies. The first point that we start by is if you take the 4C as a case studies. and case studies of all the initiatives launched after the revolutions in Tunisia by the several governments who comes in the office. And I think the main lessons to take is, for me, the first time that we have one initiative launched by former governments, and the next governments start now to work to consolidate the works. We have many initiatives, for example, for the investment code, start by one government and finished by other. The law of self-entrepreneurship start by government and finished by other. But in one government take the initiative of the former ones and continue working in it. That will be something new and something that we have to felicitate the minister for that. But there are also other, this is the positive point. The negative point is we found the same issue when we have new initiatives to work on. When we take the objective of the 4C in Tunisia is the perfect tools, is what we need exactly is, okay, we have this mismatching in the labor markets, and we need these tools to work on. But we found the same project life, when we say, and the same things. They are a political will in it. They are one minister who launched it. We have many political push, high growth, 100 of centers. After that, we push, we try to organize that. There are many funding, many donors. That will be TUT, develop platforms, all of that. And we forget to work in how we can having tools and operations. And after that, we have in the 4C, they have a director in each university, they have their office, but we miss two things, and two important things, and this is not only for the 4C, but we take many others initiatives and entities launched during the past decades, and you found the same characteristics. And what we have networks, but they don't have tools. And why they don't have tools, and they continue to work because they have this engagement of all the director of the 4C, and because they are a professor and they are engaged to help their students. Because the main point that how we can work, and even this is the point perhaps to just emphasize in your studies, is to have a database of alumni. We have an experience, for example, in ICE each year now for 5 years, we make a survey about about 5,000 to 10,000 graduates, and we try to rank universities by how many years you stay before finding your first jobs. And we do one pilot experience with TBS, Tunis Business School, last year, and because they have to give the diploma for the 4 or 5 generations, and we make a survey with all the students for the 5 past generations, and we try to helping them to find they are, for example, higher in which fields, which sectors they needs. And we continue after just doing this survey, we ask the HR of the companies that hire TBS students, and we tell them how, for example, you hire TBS students, and what are their what you like in their skills when you compare them to others. And also we make the same survey with the students, with the graduate ones, asking them what are the most useful courses and skills that they learn at universities. And I think after that we have drafting reports, and that will be very useful for the universities to review their curriculums and also for the 4C directors and of the BS, because they can helping them to market better their students and the schools and the university in general. This is the point that I think is very important to have as each universities and 4C. It's the first things how we can starting and doing all of that if we don't have a database of our alumni. And when we for example, we're saying if they have, when I say when you have the update, you have the correct emails and phones of that, and also having a resource, not only having directors and building, or just you have a platforms, and but you have, and this is what we miss in all the public administration in Tunisia, is having operating budgets. They don't have the operating budget, for example, to make surveys and to follow up or their graduates. The second point that I have just to focus on is these public-private collaborations and partnerships. And this is, for example, how we can do it. You know, for us, what's now, and this is now the practice in Tunisia, we are in the first generation, is just we need the private sector to send them a survey or invite them to workshops to know and to just hear them and see what are their needs. And after that, okay, we are at universities or we are in public administrations, or even for yesterday, for example, we are in to present the government's programs, the government programs, and we decide. And they are not this public-private dialogue and collaborations and these collaborations even in term of governance. And in some universities they invite just some representative of private sectors to be member of their scientific councils, but if they are real collaborations in terms of reviewing the strategy and putting action plans, that will be something very, very important. And it's not just to asking, for example, representative of ICE, of Utica, or Connect to be member with them, but just to having, we believe that the real public-private dialogue, that will be a grassroots one. We have to start and working with your close ecosystem at each university, and not to their representatives. And thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Let's open it up for the questions. So if anyone wants to send a question now, but we already have a few of them. Thank you, everyone. So more than the questions, there were many thank you messages. I've seen some of you answering them already, so please feel free to answer them. Some are asking for email addresses or how to get in touch, and many greetings, many greetings and thanks. So I join myself to them, and I thank you, all of you, for your valuable presentations. Let's get through a few questions. So there are also remarks. There is one interesting comment saying that the status of the people that are working today on 4Cs, and I think this came up in the recommendations of the study. So the status of some people working in the 4Cs is not very clear now. The project has made great evolutions, and that's good for the project, but some are not paid today. They don't come out in the organization of the universities. So how can we talk today about durability if there is not a clear recognition of their contribution? So maybe Professor Muzani could answer that, or anyone feel free to jump in. I'll ask a few questions. So also about almost in the same question. Some main actors today that are called in the text as animateurs became the strong link in the chain and this network, and the responsibility and engagement go further behind what the legislation has prepared for them. So maybe this could be an answer question also for Attorney Luz. There are a few also other comments, maybe an interesting suggestion, a specific budget line for the foresee activities that would allow it to receive funds from the private sector and the associations. And I think this also probably came something like that in the study. Specific question for Attorney Luz. She talked about short courses to upskill youth. Can she develop her idea? We have other questions about the administration, maybe that is being slow, and maybe a lack of support of the projects, PACT projects, that are slowing down all the objectives today that have been fixed for the program. Hadi Murad is saying that at the Four Cs, the universities that would like to participate in this debate. So I wanted to ask his question, because to tell him you can ask questions, but we're not prepared to host some people to talk now. Other questions you can also answer by typing if you understand them, because some of them are in French. So how can Tunisian Career Center cooperate with Columbia Global Center? But also a question about the how are you going to continue financing and supporting the program of EFE in collaboration with other foresee centers that have been planned for this year? How are you going to do it during this coronavirus crisis? And also, are there any specific programs or conventions, public conventions for the structures and like technopoles or cyber parks, etc. in Tunisia? Any specific offer for them? And many other questions. Let's probably already answer these ones. If anyone want to jump in, some specific questions for I think Attorney Daria Luz, for Professor Mazrani, or for anyone from the attendance that would like to answer these questions.
Well, probably I can start.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I will try to answer, about two elements. The organization of the Four Cs, I mean, the internal organization with 3 people who are in charge basically of all activities. That's what's written in the legal framework for the Four Cs. And usually, or most of the time, they are university professors who have other jobs, who have other things to do. And in some cases, they are from the administration who also have other things to do. And that is a real problem. So these people are not dedicated to the Four Cs. And that's why, I mean, it is difficult for these people to be committed in the long term for some performance. And some of them get, tired of having to deal with all the administrative burden. And that's why probably some of them finish by stopping any activity, and they leave the Four C organization. That's why we would like to work on this organization within each Four C, which people should be in which legal framework, with which budget, and for and how it could be sustainable in the long run. So that's one of the elements we should work on, and that's why we have this workshop in the future. And that's in fact one of the elements why that shows the slow implementation of the PAC project, where there is finance. They have financing for that could reach 250,000 dinars for one 4C, even more with 2 PACs, because there are 2 different PACs. two different types of projects. So they can, I mean, have like 500,000 dinars, and they cannot implement all the activities because it's a lot of work for a small number of people, and they are not well supported. So that's why you have to review the organization within the forces. The other element, the recognition issue for the people who work in the forces, and they do a lot of work, and how is that recognized, especially for people who are for professors, that to be promoted usually they need research papers, and that's why we are in the same way looking at how we can have different academic tracks for university professors in the long run, and not only research-based promotion and advancement. That's how we can encourage people to be committed and be involved in the implementation of such projects and activities within the 4Cs or other types of structures. I mean, not only about 4Cs only. So basically, these are the two main, I think, elements on which I would like to add some clarification.
So before getting other answers, let me add the 2 or 3 other questions and then hear from everyone, or really would like to hear from all of you if you're really interested in answering. So Professor Mazrani, you can also answer about the ones I'm going to add. So Mona says, like the suggestion that the alumni may be monitoring young students, can we imagine the same thing for 4C team or director? An interesting question. Also, Ghalib says, thanks you for all the students for the study that was presented earlier. And he says for him, the solution is to associate the private sector, because the private sector has the capacity of being more reactive, reactivity, probably more agile than the public one. And he says, do you think it's possible to have the private sector spirit in the 4Cs centers? Nasreen, hi Nasreen. Nasreen says, we are working on many different axes within the 4Cs. So it's not the case in the 4C leaders today. She says, should we reposition probably hopefully the study didn't reveal the axes of the work that has been done by the 4Cs that had most impact from the point of view of the students. I'm trying to translate it. Probably it wasn't already written. French. Okay. Okay. Many people, as I said, were sending you their greetings. Sophia says, thank you for this very interesting topic. Remark from the Women Tunisian Engineer Association. Please don't forget in the gender specificity. For example, for women engineers, the delay to get a job is 3 times longer than for men. And this delay increases for youth from the regional area. It is important to consider these problems in the 4C strategy. It's funny because when I'm reading this, I have 2 screens right next to the window, and it's Mrs. Eugenia and Fatin. I see them both smiling to this question. So I'm sure we're going to have a reply on that. Maddie says that the main goals of the 4Cs is to reinforce competences and match links with the external environment. That is really, that really needs to have its own autonomy to have good results. This is very important. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop there. Thank you all for your questions. Let's move on to the answers. Whoever wants to react to all this, and then we will end this very interesting webinar, and people are saying it.
I'll go ahead with the remark on girls and women. Thank you so much to Sophia for pointing this out. We did talk about it in the introduction, but it's true that we did not make specific recommendations to target groups. This is something that was pointed out to us during the field trip, during the interviews that we conducted with the students in the centers. And going back to the topic of governance, whatever the structure that ends up being adopted by the Ministry of Education and the 4Cs, we think that even if it's centralized, there's definitely a need to look at regional or target group specific needs, because these were very different. Some places were telling us that languages, for example, was the #1 needs or the thing that they would really love from career centers. In other regions, it was something else. So we really recommend that when looking at the governance structure, Centralizing could definitely help implement some of the solutions that we proposed. But yes, it's important to not forget the local specificities of each school, universities, and sometimes regions.
Anyone else? Probably Attorney Luz, Madame Luz. There were
a question for me as an attorney. I'm sorry. What is the question?
Okay, there was a specific one for you when you talked about short courses to upskill youth. Can you develop on your idea? And the one about the regulations today, how, I don't know if you can go on that, but I still repeat the question. Someone asked a question about how the 4Cs is regulated today. Probably it's developing very fast, and it didn't take in consideration that, and the text goes even I mean les animateurs, that's how they are called in the legal text, became the strong link in the chain and in the network, and their responsibility and engagement went even beyond what the text prepared for them. And today, people are not, as said in a first comment that I read, people are working through their status, they're not paid and do not come in the organization of the universities. So how can we talk about durability if there's no recognition of their contribution? And it's about the legal text, actually.
I am really sorry, I don't know about this legal text.
Yeah, but the short, the other comment about the short courses to upskill youth, can you develop on that?
Yeah, EFE has very interesting programs, and I think Lamia can talk about these programs, especially the ones that EFE has done in the universities, like finding a job is a job. I think this is the most important thing, and I think the study showed that it's to develop skills, soft skills. I think that is very important for the Tunisian students, and I leave the floor to Lamia, because Lamia can talk about these short programs that EFE has developed in Tunisia, and I think they are doing very well.
Yeah, thank you, Maître Luz. Actually, just to complement what Maître Donia just mentioned, she already mentioned earlier in her introduction that we've trained more than 13,000 students now all over the country in different career centers, providing the job search techniques training, defining job training, but also soft skills training, entrepreneurship ideation camps. So these are really very short training sessions that are very useful for you to prepare them to address the job market. Regarding the question relating to the regulatory framework, I believe the study and the presentation that the team gave showed the importance first of the governance aspects and also the funding, and there are recommendations that are very interesting in terms of creating this fund to ensure the financial sustainability of the career centers, and also to enable career centers to raise funds and to have like a sustainable process for their activities. So I believe these recommendations now are presented to them at the level of the ministry, and certainly they will be considered. Professor Mazghani mentioned earlier also that there will be a workshop to prepare for a whole roadmap regarding the 4Cs network, and certainly all the different topics and axes presented in the study will be addressed. So there is governance, sustainable funding, the monitoring and evaluation. So different aspects that should be covered later on. I mean, in the workshop that the ministry is going to organize.
Mrs. Bouchamemi? Your mic is off. Can you turn on your mic?
Can you hear me?
Perfect, yes. No, now you turn it off again.
No, I don't know.
No, yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I would like to make a remark concerning this career center, and I would like to share an experience that AmCham had with the TBS Tunis Business School in 2012. We were able to launch what is called the Smart Center, and then after that, the Smart Center has been assimilated to what is called now the 4Cs. And the good thing about that experience is that the training and the programs were offered by leaders of multinationals. We used to work, since it is AmCham, we used to have an interaction with US multinationals, but also there were leaders from the Tunisian industry. So the idea to have this interaction with the private sector is very important if we would like really to achieve something with those career centers. It is important to see what the labor market is looking for. It's important to tailor the needs of the labor market to what the university should offer. This is my point of view regarding this career centers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bouchameri. Any other comments or answers? Okay, Yusuf, yes. And then I'll have a question for you, Professor Mezghani, because we really would like, so if you can prepare it, we really want to answer this question about the legal text changes, probably, because I think it's the responsibility of the ministry, of course. So maybe if you can prepare some answer about that. Yusuf, please.
Yeah, very briefly about the career centers. Of course, at Columbia University, we have our career center, and so it could be an example, but also I think from the Tunisian Ministry of Higher Education, it would be interesting to look at the career centers at state universities in the US as a model. I mean, not a model, but at least to see that the example of career centers in state universities who cater to sometimes, who are working with public universities, and that can be a model. Thank you.
Any other answers or comment or anything to add, because we are finishing in now actually. So any last remarks?
Yes, Wasim, just two things. I wanted to add that the reports and the presentation will be available already on the website of the Columbia Global Center Tunis website, and we will also provide it on our website later on. But it will be available, so all this work will be at hand for those who would like to know more about this wonderful and amazing job done by the team. And I also would like to add that as Mr. Mezghani mentioned earlier, it's now a work that will be considered later on, at the level of the ministry, considering the strategy and the roadmap for the career centers.
Okay, Professor Mezghani, if you can answer, can there be modifications about the legal text? Maybe there are some changes. I don't know if it's in your plans. And there is another comment that just arrived. If Mrs. Bouchamay want to answer it, is there a possibility to cooperate and involve CJD and Chambre des Femmes d'Entreprise in foresee activities to reinforce public and private cooperation? That would be our last question. Professor Mezghani, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Wasim. In fact, the first step we took with the new minister is to move the 4C responsibility from within the cabinet with one person to the Director General, of University Reform, to have a steady and team dedicated to this. And that's what we did, within the last 2 months. And there is a text that is already ready for, to change some of the aspects of the legal framework for 4Cs. But since we are seeking to organize, the workshop in 3 weeks at most, we said, well, probably we have to wait until see what would the outcome be, and to rethink and to put all the elements, the new elements about organizing the 4Cs and how they would function in the future. So that's why it's not, we have already a draft, but it will be improved again, within the next few weeks, probably 2 months. So there is a change. There will be a change.
That's a scoop. That the journalist part of me that really wanted an answer about that. We'll come on that, but on the radio next time. Mrs. Bouchamemi, I don't know if you want to answer this last question that came up after you spoke. Do you want me to say it again, or?
Yeah, so CGD, I wish I'm a member of CGD, but I'm more than 40 years old. So because there is a condition to be a member there. But I think for CNFCE, la Chambre Nationale Femmes Chef d'Entreprise, I think I will speak to Leila Belkhairia, who is the president of la CNFCE, and I'm sure she will be very much interested to work with the 4Cs. She's very open-minded. I'm sure that she will take this idea.
Thank you. And you can involve the CGD. Huh? It's not about age.
Yes, we're going to talk to them.
Professor Mazani, yes?
Yeah, I just want to tell you that on the website of the 4Cs, there is a list of all partners, and CGD is already a partner.
Very good.
I think the Association of Women Entrepreneurs is also a partner as well. So there is no limit, with whom we can work. It's open, and we would like everybody to be involved at different levels, in different cities, in different 4Cs, in different universities. We don't have exactly necessarily the same partners everywhere. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Also, I would like to thank Mrs. Amira Germezi, former special advisor to the former minister, and she's here. She says hi. She's been following us, and also former president of CGD, Wafa Makhlouf, who was quoted in your study, and actual president of SEED, and many others that have been sending messages and greetings to all of you. Thank you, all of you. It was a great chat, and I hope to see you very soon. Maybe some closing remarks. I don't know. I'll choose Ron. Probably. I don't know if Mr. Ron is still here. Let's hear some closing improvised remarks about what you have been hearing from earlier, and any other person that would like to add any specific message, because many people are still following us, and I would like to say hi to them. I'll say it in Tunisian also, and in French. مرحبا بكم الكل اللي تبعتونا. Vous étiez très nombreux اللي تبعوا فينا, et on est très contents. Donc voilà, نسمع quelques closing remarks, improvised closing remarks from anyone who wants to take that.
Wasim, I would like to thank Amira Germezi for all the great work she did for the 4Cs. I would like also to say that Professor Tawfiq Ijlasi was following us today as well.
Yeah, hi.
And he was a minister, of higher education at some point, and I was in his cabinet. We worked also together on the 4Cs at the beginning.
Yeah, and also it's public, so I see the special advisor to the Prime Minister, Adnan. I say hi to him. He's watching with us now, and thank you for answering my invitation earlier, Adnan. And yeah, great people watching. So thank you all. Mr. Ron, probably, I don't know if he heard my question, if he wants to have some closing remarks. Otherwise, I'll pass it to Mrs. Shafei.
Thank you, Wasim. I'm really delighted with this webinar. I would like to express my sincere and grateful thanks again to His Excellency, the Minister of Higher Education for his time, Professor Mazrani, and our guest of honor, Maître Bruder, our founder, Maître Daniel Luz, our president. Thank you for your support. Mrs. Amel Bouchamemi, who initiated actually the partnership with Columbia Global Center. Thank you, and I'm very glad with this very successful partnership. And Youssef, many thanks for really leading the process with Jenny. Thank you very much, Mrs. Eugenia and Mrs. Liza Anderson, for your support and for the great work done by all the team. Thank you very much, the wonderful team from Columbia University, Mr. Majdi Hassan, also for giving like a voice of the private sector today. I'm very amazed by the interaction with the participants. I would like to thank them very much. Professor Tawfiq Jlassi, who's board member of EFE-Tunisie. I'd like to say hello to him. Thank you for the participation to all our guests and participants. Thank you, Wasim. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last but not least, thank you, Medianet, our technical partner. I'm here at the Medianet great co-working space offices. They are the technical partner for this event. Great job, guys. Thank you, all of you, and see you very soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Be well, everyone.